What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Think Different Theory. My name is Josh Forti, and in this podcast episode, I'm going to show you how we pull off six-figure Facebook group launches. All right. Now, you might be thinking, Josh, what do you mean we, and how do you pull them off? When I say we, I mean me and my team, my company. I could use the word I here, I suppose, but really, I want to give credit where credit's due. I have an amazing team, and they've really helped out a lot. And my clients that I've pulled this off with, they're very awesome and helpful as well. So yes, I'm the one, the mastermind behind it all, but I do have a team that helps with it, and I want to give credit where credit is due there because I could not do everything that I do alone, at least at scale. Maybe once I could, but I certainly couldn't keep up with everything. But I'm not exaggerating here, by the way. This is actually true. We just wrapped up the Cash Flow Tactics Facebook group launch not too long ago. Many of you guys know about this or have heard about this. I'm actually going to break this down, but this is actually the third six-figure Facebook group launch that I have done, and I don't think that I've actually gone and given enough credit or really talked about, I guess, the other two ones enough. The first Facebook group launch that I did that was six figures was actually a Steve Larsen Facebook group. The second one was mine, and then the third one was now Brad Gibb Cash Flow Tactics. We are working on two more launches that we're going to be doing. Hopefully that will yield in multi-5 or six figures depending upon the size of it. But what I want to do here is I want to go in, I want to break down the behind the scenes here and not overhype anything. I want to give you actual realistic facts. I want to show you exactly what we did and not try to trick you into being like, oh yeah, we did all this stuff. Oh, but you didn't know that we had all this going on over here too. I want to actually lay it out so that you know exactly what we did, exactly what to expect, and so that you can start to understand that you can do this for yourself as well. Now, I'm not saying that if you follow this process that you're going to have a six-figure Facebook group launch the very first time. Now, if you hire me, maybe that would be the case, but you could go and you can very easily have a five-figure launch. Like a $10,000 Facebook group launch is more than realistic, right? With most of my clients, we shoot for between 30 and 50,000 on them for their first time around. And if it's their second, third, or fourth launch, or if it's a Facebook launch to an existing audience of any sorts, six figures is really kind of that benchmark of like, okay, we crushed it if we hit that number. But 30 to 50,000, pretty realistic here, okay? And the reason this came up, guys, the reason I'm doing this is actually for a couple of reasons. I want to be transparent here is number one, recently, as you guys know, we did the Traffic Secrets book launch with Russell Brunson, which we placed number 19 out of however many tens of thousands of affiliates we're promoting. I know they sold, I don't even remember what the exact, I want to say it was like 50 or 60,000 books in the first couple weeks. And we placed number 19 thanks to you guys and for everybody that bought there. So I really appreciate it. There were some massive affiliates. I mean, like Steve Larsen, Dean Graciosi, right? Rich Dad was up in there. Who else? Julie Stoian was in there. I mean, Peng Joon, Jim Edwards. I mean, these are people that have massive lists, right? I mean, huge audiences. And we were up there in the top 20 with them. So shout out to everybody that bought the book through my link. I really appreciate it. But one of the bonuses that I gave away in this, in my bonus stack to the Traffic Secrets book was a case study breakdown of how we did this Facebook group launch. And Brad's was about $152,000 when it was all said and done. And actually, it's actually significantly more than that, but that was the only revenue that I could actually track. It was actually, he believes, the lifetime value of their customers, because Brad's like a really big math geek and math nerd, right? So they have all their numbers like built out. He actually projects that by the time it's all said and done and they finish up their back-end sales from it, it's probably going to be closer to almost $400,000 in revenue to their bottom line by the time it's all said and done. And on top of that, they went and now have a Facebook group that they can continue to pitch to, that they can continue to sell to, that they can continue to serve with and grow their presence, okay? So this is what I'm talking about. And so there was such an overwhelming response to that. We had so many people email back to us and are like, Josh, this is an amazing case study. Thank you so much for it. I thought, you know what? I'm going to do a podcast episode on this explaining to you what we did here. And while I won't have the ability to go into as much detail as I did on that case study because I was in front of a whiteboard and I did breakdowns and I had notes and I gave them all these PDF documents, I think I can give you a really good understanding of how we actually did it and the different parts and pieces that go into it. And what's interesting is we use the audience hacking framework. And I've actually gone through and redone the audience hacking framework and actually expanded it a little bit more. It's actually, there's 5 parts to it now rather than just 3. And as I went through and kind of adjusted and tweaked this Facebook group launch, I was like, oh, actually, yeah, that would fit better in here. Oh, this actually is explained better this way. I expanded it because I don't think 3 phases of everything just covered enough. There's 3 parts to the launch phase, but really there's 5 pieces or 5 elements to audience hacking that we will go over here today, and that will actually break down the launch of this group. So this process of audience hacking, I specifically today I'm going to be talking about Facebook group launches, okay? But this works for podcast launches. I've done it for my podcast. I've done it for Brad's podcast as well. We're doing it for Dan Henry's podcast. We're doing it for Damon, potentially in the future, Damon's and several other people's podcasts. And this works for Facebook groups. This works for offers, even in general. Even if you don't have a Facebook group or podcast, this would work for a YouTube channel. This works for anything that you're trying to launch and then tie an offer to on the back end, okay? So that's kind of the process that I'm breaking down here for you. So strap in. I'm going to go for as long as I need to on here. I don't know, 30, 45 minutes. Maybe I'll go an hour. I'm not sure. But yeah, I want to break this down because I feel like people think that this is this far out there thing that they can't do, right? And the more I've looked into it and the more I've studied it, it actually has very little to do with your existing audience, with your existing credibility. Like, yes, those things help. Obviously, if you already have a massive email list or you already are well known in your industry, like that's going to help you have an easier launch. However, it's not mandatory, right? Like you can still go, and while the process might take a little bit longer to actually unveil and like roll out, it is still totally possible. All right. So this is not clickbait. These actually happen. We've generated hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably millions at this point. I just don't have way to track it in revenue that has come from launching these 6-figure and multi-5-figure Facebook groups. Okay, so let's back up. So tell you the story, the context behind this. I was sitting in Australia. I was on the other side of the world, literally. And I get I don't know if it was a calendar invitation or what. Anyway, I end up on the phone with Brad Gibb. And for those of you that don't know who Brad Gibb is, Brad Gibb, we've had him on the show multiple times. Cashflow Tactics is the name of his company. Cashflow Tactics, Financial Freedom in 10 Years or Less is the name of his Facebook group. You guys can go check it out. His business partners, Ryan and Jimmy, they're awesome guys over there, and they've helped a tremendous amount of people. These are the guys that like Russell Brunson trusts with his money, and Dave Woodward, and myself, and Rachel Peterson, and Steve Larsen. Like, we all give these guys our money because they're super, super smart, okay? So I end up on the phone with Brad, and Brad's kind of their marketing director, right? He kind of runs everything, and we're going through, and he's basically telling me like what he wants to do, and I'm like, Brad, like, this is what you need to do with your social media plan. And he goes, Josh, I don't really know. Like, that sounds like a lot of work. I'm not exactly sure if we can pull this off. I'm not sure if our audience will do it. And I've heard all these objections before, right? So I'm sitting there, it's funny because I'm driving on the wrong side of the road with the steering wheel on the opposite side of the car because I'm over in Australia, right? And so I pull over and I'm listening to him tell me these objections. And it's funny because it's the exact same objections that Steve Larsen gave me, right? It was like, I don't know if I can do this or blah. I'm like, you guys you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you need a Facebook group here, okay? And so we go through, and eventually I convince him. I'm like, okay, like, here's the like, we need to go and get started. He goes, okay, I'm in, I'm sold, let's go. It took some convincing, right? He was scared, he was nervous, but he knew that this was the route, the path that we ultimately needed to go down. Because what he was after, once again, was not a Facebook group, right? What he was after was a loyal, engaged audience of people that were ready to buy. And that is what I do, all right? What we do at Think Different Theory is we help people build loyal, engaged audiences of fans ready to buy. Whether that is a podcast or a Facebook group or a YouTube channel or whatever it is that you are trying to do, the process is the same. The vehicle may be different, but the process is the same. The strategy behind it, and that's what I'm going to unveil for you here today, all right? So I sit down and I send him over my onboarding document, all right? And now we begin the process. Now, I've done a lot of Facebook group launches. I've grown and managed over 6 million followers on social media, all right? The very first thing that I do when I sit down, if you're taking notes, here's where you should start, okay? The very first thing that I had to do is I sat down and I analyzed my assets, okay? And this is a mistake that I think a lot of people make, and just a step that they miss is you've got to understand what it is that you're working with. And it's funny because I talked to Brad, and he's like, well, we don't really have an existing email list. I was like, okay. He goes, well, we don't really have an existing, chatbot list. We don't really have an existing this. It turns out that they did. They just weren't using them. It was a dead list, okay? And he's like, well, we have this Facebook group. It has a couple hundred members in it, but it's dead. It's not engaged, right? It's still an asset. And so when you're sitting down and trying to build out something, you've got to look at the complete picture. Because if I would have gone off of Brad's word, and I'm not, Brad didn't know any better, right? If I would have gone off of Brad's word, I would have thought that I had very, very little to work with. But I pushed a little bit more. I said, well, send over what you do have. And so when I logged into his account, I was like, okay, you've got a couple thousand people on this email list. When's the last time you emailed them? And he's like, well, we haven't emailed them forever. It's a dead list. And it was a dead list. But that doesn't mean I can't look at the data and the messaging and the emails that went out and potentially get some of those people there. And so step number one that I go through in this process of everything is I just analyze what I have. And I start to figure out, all right, what am I working with? So this would include things like email lists, ManyChat lists, or chatbot list, any form of social media channels. Now keep in mind, guys, you may know Brad now because he has a podcast and a Facebook group and he's been on my show a bunch of times. But before Brad and I worked together, Brad was essentially a nobody online, all right? And I have his permission to say that. He had a couple hundred followers on Instagram. He had a few thousand friends on Facebook. He had very few followers on his page, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 likes on his Facebook page, right? Lower engagement. His Facebook ads account was shut down, so he wasn't even able to run a whole lot of ads, right? But yet he had a multi-million dollar, in fact, he hit the $10 million award in his business because he had a really solid business. He just didn't understand marketing and understand the power of social media marketing like he does now, right? And so I sat down, I was like, okay, what do we got? And so I wrote out, okay, Instagram, this many followers. YouTube channel, oh, that's non-existent. They don't have one. Okay, podcast, nope, well, they don't have one. Facebook group, 200 members in his group or whatever, whatever that number was. Email list, X number of subscribers, but dead list, hasn't been contacted in 9 months. Inability to run Facebook ads, boom. And so I made out this entire list. And then I went and I was like, okay, now what about your offers? Now, what are your freebies? Now, what are your lead magnets? What have you been using? And so then I was like, okay, this was $10,000 offer. This is their $2,000 offer. This is their $500 offer. This is their $100 offer. This is free. This is, okay, here's what I have. And I make out this checklist and I kind of just sit back and I analyze like, okay, this is what I'm working with because I can't go and I can't figure out what I'm doing unless I first go get clear on it, okay? So that's what you're going to be doing. Write down all those things, make out a list of this. Any place where you have an audience, and essentially, guys, the two things that we're looking for here are, number one, assets of lists, all right? Anywhere where they currently have people that they can go and contact, right? Text messaging lists would work too. And then the second thing is messaging assets, meaning what messaging are they currently using? What offers, products, things like that do they currently have in place that they know are proven, that follow their messaging, that people are resonating with, that we know is already working, all right? And those are the two buckets or the two categories of things that I'm going to go and then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to look at. So then after that happens, I go, all right, Brad, it's time to have a meeting, all right? So we schedule a meeting. I'm just going to kind of walk through this process. Now, at this time, I'm still halfway across the world and overseas. And so I sit down and I go, okay, I'm going to have to figure out how to pull off this Facebook group launch while I'm overseas, why I'm not in an office. I have limited Wi-Fi and capability, right? I'm traveling the Philippines over there. I'm back on my little scooter over there. Like, I got Leah behind me, right? And we're going around and I'm going off to the next hotel with my computer so I can go and hook up the Wi-Fi and have these meetings, okay? So what I'm telling, and the reason I tell you that is people think that you need super fancy stuff, that you need studios and lights and all this stuff. I did this overseas from a laptop on the back of a moped, all right? The strategy is important. Once you have a strategy that works, then you can go and, have success with this. So I sit down, I make out this list, I analyze it, and I go, okay, all right, now that I have my assets, now I can plug this into my framework. Now I can plug this into what I know actually is going to work and actually go through this process of everything, all right? And so I said, Brad, we need to take you through the audience hacking framework. We need to sit down and here's how we're going to launch your group. He goes, all right, I'm ready to rock and roll. I said, the first thing that we need to do is we need to figure out what your messaging is. What is your messaging? All right. So step number one of audience hacking is messaging. Let me explain to you what I mean by this. Okay. Brad and I, the very first time that we ever met, we met at Ruth Chris Steakhouse. It was in Boise, Idaho. We were at a Steve Larsen event out there, and we sit down and we have dinner. And Steve and Brad blows my mind, right? Because we talked for 4 hours and he's telling me about the economy and the stock market and how he used to work at Goldman Sachs and all they do for their customers and their blah, 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 and all this type of stuff. And at the end, I look at him and I go, this is incredible, right? Like, this is absolutely amazing. Why don't you have a podcast? Why don't you have a Facebook group, right? And he goes, Josh, because the only way I can educate and convince people that they need my services is when we sit down and have a 2 or 3 hour conversation like this. If I could sit down and have a 2 or 3 hour long conversation with everybody like you just did, like we just did together, I would sell everybody that I sit down with. But because I can't do that, and because I don't know what the person is after, I was like, he goes, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to go in and bring my audience together. And that is the power of having a message versus not having a message, okay? So, and actually, let me back up there and give a little bit more context, because that, I should say, that's the negative side of not having a message. On the flip side of that, you look at Steve Larsen. Steve Larsen, whose event we were at when Brad and I met, all right, is just as smart as Brad Gibb is about what Steve does. Steve does offer creation. Brad does finance and money, okay? Steve is very, very smart at what he does there. Brad is very, very smart at what he does. Steve was able to go and get 500 people at an event. Brad wasn't. He couldn't even get a Facebook group launched. Why? Because Steve Larsen had his messaging down. It wasn't because Steve Larsen was smarter. It was because Steve Larsen took the time to figure out his messaging. Brad had not yet. Okay? See the difference here? So what we need to do before we figure out our Facebook group, what we're going to launch, what we're going to, how we're going to say it, who it is, all this stuff, what we're selling, how we're going to do all this, we've got to figure out what our messaging is, because we don't have the luxury to be able to go and sit down and have a 2 or 3 hour conversation with every single person. We need to be able to figure out enough about our dream who, our audience, to figure out, okay, this is the type of person that we're after. This is their core desire. This is what we teach. That is our messaging. Okay? Steve was able to figure that out. Brad hadn't. So when I came in, the first thing that I did, which is step number 1 of audience hacking, is I said, Brad, we've got to get clear on our messaging. And we worked a lot, and we really dived down deep into this to figure out the messaging. Now, messaging consists of 3 parts. All right? Part number 1 is the who. Part number 2 is the story that you're going to tell your who. And part number 3 is your big promise. Okay? So, let me break this down. The who is your dream customer. Okay? Who is that? When you identify who that is and you get very clear on your dream customer, then you can figure out what you're going to tell them in order to get them to be interested, right? So I sat down, I said, Brad, who is your dream customer? And he's like, well, it's, this type of person. They work at a job. And keep in mind, Brad serves entrepreneurs, but his audience is actually 80% 80% employees, right? He works with entrepreneurs at the very, very high level, but a lot of the people that come to him are actually employee type people, okay? So he's like, they're employees, they're this type of person, they want to achieve financial freedom, they have these struggles, they are listening to the traditional way of money, blah, blah, blah. We get super, super clear on this. And I was like, amazing. Okay, now that we've got this, I was like, Brad, what story can we tell them in order to get them to be interested in you and what you guys do? And he's like, well, I don't know. And I said, okay, so let me ask a question a different way. What big promise or big result are you going to get them if they come over here and follow them? And he goes, Josh, I can make anybody financially free in 10 years or less if they follow what I tell them to do. Boom, right? Big promise. Financial freedom in 10 years or less. All right? Now, if I were to go to you and say, hey, you can achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less. And then I have no idea who you are, but let's just assume that you are making $60,000 a year and you're an entrepreneur. All right? Like, let's just assume that that's what it is. And I were to go to somebody else that works a 9-to-5 job and say, you can achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less. And I go to somebody else that's working a part-time college kid, right? And you can achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less. My messaging is going to be way different to every single one of those people, right? So we had to figure out who my ideal person is And then once I've identified, okay, this is the type of person that I want to go after, I was like, okay, Brad, now if the promise that you're going to get this very specific person is financial freedom in 10 years or less, what story can you tell them that will allow you to allow them to resonate with your message and be interested in what you have to say? And he goes, oh my gosh, I've got the story. Ryan's story. It's not mine, it's Ryan's, right? And I was like, ding, 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 ding. Okay. And it could have been his. We just used Ryan's because we wanted to incorporate Ryan into it. Okay. So now we've got our messaging down because we figured out who our person was. We figured out what the story was that we were telling them. And then we figured out the big promise that's going to hook them in. So now we can say, are you do you want to achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less? There's our big promise. Well, guess what? I was on that same path, and here's my story. Tells him the story of how he achieved financial freedom in 10 years or less. And he tells it in such a way that his ideal audience makes sense and understands. Okay? That's step number 1 of audience hacking. I get clear on who my messaging is. So after I sit down with him, and what's funny is what went down when I did this message with him was I went and we rented the nicest hotel. I was in the Philippines at this time. So I flew from Australia to the Philippines. And we rented the nicest hotel we could find. It was a 4-star hotel. It was the best Western hotel. We actually stayed there twice. It's a super, super nice hotel over there. It was really classy. And their internet was so slow, but it was the fastest on the island. And so I sit down. We have a 3-hour meeting. 3 hours. Now, keep in mind, Brad has paid me a ton of money to do this. I'm good at what I do. Like tens of thousands of dollars he paid me to help him with this. And 3 hours. Actually, it was more like 10, but this particular call was 3 hours just figuring out the who and the story and like getting super clear on that. And then I went and spent like 7 or 8, 9 more hours writing the story and adjusting the story, editing and tweaking, whatever. So I spent a lot of time here. Then I went and I said, okay, Brad, now that we figured out the who and the messaging and everything about them, now we move on to step number 2 of audience hacking. All right. So step number 1, identify your messaging. Step number 2, location. Location times 2. What do I mean by that? Okay, guys, your dream customer already exists. Whatever it is that you're selling, course, consulting, coaching, agency work, whatever, your dream customer is already out there. You simply need to figure out, number 1, where they're located and where you want them to be located. Meaning, where is your dream customer now? What podcasts are they listening to? What Facebook groups are they in? What YouTube channels are they watching? What books are they reading? What magazines? What email lists are they subscribed to? What influencers are they following? That is the location they are currently in. And then the second question is, what location do we want them to be? So in this case, for Brad, that was easy. It was a Facebook group. Remember at the beginning, I said this can work anywhere. This could work if it was a podcast, a Facebook group, a YouTube channel, an email list, whatever. This is where you fill in the blank there and you go, okay, what is it? Facebook group. So I said, okay, Brad, I want you to go. And I sent him a spreadsheet and I said, I want you to make out a list of where your ideal audience currently is. And so he goes and he makes out this entire list. And there was a podcast category and a YouTube category and an influencer category, right? Like all these different things. And so we came up with like 50, 60, 70 people that had or places where his ideal audience was. And then I said, Brad, do you think that any of your current audience members are on your existing list? Let's go back to your assets. Let's look at your assets here. Now, keep in mind, as I'm building the messaging, as I'm figuring out the location, as I'm figuring out all the next steps, I'm looking at my current assets. That's why I made out a list of them. So when I was trying to figure out my ideal who and my messaging, I was going back to the emails and the offers that Brad had already made, the offers and the emails, because then I could go, okay, well, you said this. So as I'm making out my story, I'm like, okay, we can use this here and we can use this here. But if I didn't know those assets, if I hadn't figured out that and I hadn't laid those out in places yet, I wouldn't have known, right? So I get clear on my assets, then I figure out my messaging, and now I go to location. Location, where are they at, and do I have any on my existing list? Turns out Brad had a few hundred people on his list that when we emailed them later on, they actually responded, right? And we were able to get some people back with it. So we make out this list. I said, okay, this is where we're at. Here are all the podcasts, here are this. Because we're going to need to go and leverage those people. Keep in mind, guys, there's only 2 ways to get followers. Either, well, in a Facebook group, there's 3 ways, but okay, let's go with Facebook group here. We're talking about, there's 3 ways to grow a Facebook group, guys. 1, you get members from your own audience. 2, you get members from somebody else's audience. Or 3, Facebook promotes your group. The goal is to utilize all 3. If you do not have an existing list, then you only have 2. right? If you do have an existing list, you have all three. If you only have the other two, fine. Then we gotta make sure that we're hitting other people's lists, other people's audiences even harder. And that's what we had to do with Brad, because the truth of the matter is, guys, while Brad did have a list and did have something existing, it wasn't a whole lot. And most of his audience came from other people. Most of his audience came from Facebook promoting his group because we got great activity in it. We'll talk about that here in a second, okay? So, where are they at? Where do we want them? Make out those lists. So Brad sends me those back, and I go, okay, Brad, great. Now we've got to figure out what we're going to offer these people. Okay? There's a book. One of my favorite books is this book called Influence. It's The Psychology of Persuasion. It's by a guy named Robert Cialdini. All right? He's a master persuader. He's a really, really smart dude. And in this book, he talks about how people make decisions. And guess what? One of the ways that people make decisions is people like to be rewarded, right? If they perceive that what they have to give up in order to get something is less, that if that exchange of value is a plus for them, they're going to move forward with that decision. So guess what? If I tell someone, I've created a Facebook group, you should come join. Really no incentive there. They don't really get any benefit out of joining the Facebook group. It's going to take them time. Now they're in another group. So it's not that valuable. But if I tie a story to that offer and I add a freebie, what have I done? I brought context. I've made emotional connection. I've given them a reason to act now. And I've made it I've made it more beneficial for them to join the group rather than not join the group, right? I've given them a freebie. So what we did is I said, okay, Brad, we figured out that we wanted to go into the Facebook group. We figured out that your message is financial freedom in 10 years or less. You've identified all these podcasts and Facebook groups and everything that your ideal customer's in. What can we use to incentivize them, to entice them to come in to this Facebook group over here? Okay? Make sense? So I go through and I'm like, all right, what's some freebies that we can offer? And he's like, well, I've got all these different things over here. And so I went through and I started piecing together. And I was like, oh man, I know based on what you told me about your audience here that they're going to want to learn this. So I'm like, okay, we want that in there. Okay, we want this in here. Okay, we want this in here. And so I create this lead magnet, this freebie that I say, hey, listen, what we're going to do is we go to all these groups and all these podcasts and all these interviews that you're going to do when we launch this group. We need something to incentivize them to get them out of the group. So let's say, hey, if you come and you join our Facebook group over here, we're not only going to give you free access to the Facebook group, we're also going to give you this freebie valued at, I think it was like $1,000. They took $1,000 worth of their trainings, and it really was. They have some really awesome trainings, and they put it together, and they're like, hey, normally if you were to buy all these things separately, it costs you $1,000. If you join our Facebook group, we'll give you them for free. Now it's a freebie, right? Now that's incentive to come in and join. And so I go, okay, what's my offer? I got to get really, really clear on my offer. I've got to know what the problem is. I've got to know what the solution is. I've got to know the framework. I've got to know what we're selling, right? I've got to know the result that we're going to get. I've got to go to the freebies, right? And I start figuring this out. Now, when we launch a Facebook group, when we launch any form of group, podcast, whatever this is, audience hacking, okay? We have two offers. The first offer is a freebie. The second offer is a paid offer, okay? The first offer says, excuse me. Oh, gotta sneeze here. The first offer says, join my group, subscribe to my podcast, do whatever, right? And I'll give you this for free. The second offer is once they're in there, we're going to put them through an indoctrination sequence and then we're going to sell them and that's how we're going to make money. And this is anywhere from $1,000 or $500 to $10,000, $20,000, whatever your service is. Okay. So I sit down and I go, okay, what's the problem our audience is facing? Write it down. Problem. Okay. The problem is that people don't have financial freedom. What's the solution? Cash flow tactics, financial freedom in 10 years or less, their framework. That's the solution. Okay, great. That's the solution. What is that framework? I write down that framework. All right, what are we selling that delivers that framework in a way that they can understand? Okay, they have a course and they have a coaching program. Okay, so they had two different offers and there was options there. Okay, great. Do we have any bonuses with that? Oh, okay, that goes in, that completes my offer. And then what's the big result? The big promise that we're getting them is financial freedom in 10 years or less. Okay. So I sit down and I go, okay, here's my paid offer. Here's my free offer. They both follow this framework. They both follow this formula. This is what I'm going to use to entice people. What am I doing here? I'm creating my assets. Okay. I'm going through and I'm saying, okay, in order for me to launch a Facebook group, I've got to put together my assets, right? I've got to come up with everything that I need. So what do I need? I need my messaging. I need my location. I need my offer, right? What else do I need? Well, there's one final piece that we're missing. Think about this. If you've got your messaging down and you've got your locations down and you've got your offer down, what else do you need? And I was like, Brad, what else do we need? He's like, I don't know, Josh. I think that's everything. I'm like, how are you going to deliver that? How are you going to deliver your messaging? He's like, oh, yeah. I was like, content. Okay, so we need content. Step number 4 of the audience hacking framework is content, okay? Because we need to be able to deliver our message to the location that we want to deliver it and tell them about our offers via our content, okay? So let me repeat that just so that you understand this. We need to deliver our messaging to the location that our ideal audience is in and tell them about our offers, and we do that using content, okay? So now I sit down and I go, okay, what's the type of content that I'm going to use? What's the format of that content? So is this long form content or short term content? Is it video or is it written? Is it organic? Is it an ad? Is it an interview? Is it a Facebook group? Is it a podcast, right? How long is it? How am I going to distribute it? What are my call to actions in this content? Okay. And so I sit down and start asking myself these questions. I'm like, okay, I got all these assets. How am I delivering it? I'm doing it through my content. And so with Brad, I said, Brad, we've got 2 locations of our group. So we need 2 different types of content. One type of content we're going to distribute into other people's locations where our ideal audience is. And the second type of content is once they're in our Facebook group, how we're going to entice them to actually come buy our product. So what are those 2 types of content? And the 2 types of content that we chose were interviews and a 5-day challenge. Now, the interviews were for other people's audiences. We went to podcasts, we went to Facebook groups, and we went to YouTube channels and Instagram accounts. And we said, hey guys, we've got this offer, we've got this group that we're launching, yada, yada, yada. Can we come in and do an interview in your group or to your YouTube channel or whatever it was? We're going to be talking about how to create financial freedom in 10 years or less. Now, if the person that we're hitting up has an audience of our dream customers and our message, our story specifically speaks to that type of customer, and we go to that person with all those Facebook groups and go, hey, look, we've got this message. Will you share it with your audience? And they read it and they go, oh my gosh, my audience would absolutely love this. Do you think that they're going to say yes? They are, yes. Why? Because it's valuable to their audience. So you've got to go through and you've got to make sure that the messaging is speaking to the ideal audience and that the people that you're hitting up in the locations that you've identified actually have your dream customer. Because guess what? If I went to Steve Larsen and I was trying to launch a yoga group and I said, yo, Steve, what up, man? I've got this yoga program I'm launching. Can we launch it to your group? Can we do an interview about yoga? He'd probably be like, nah. Why? Because his audience isn't like that. That would be a bad location. His audience is business people, okay? So you don't just go to big influencers, you go to the right influencers. And so we do these interviews. Brad lines these people up, right? We go interview. And we're giving away this lead magnet. We're giving away this lead magnet for free. Now we're getting people on our email list and sending them to the Facebook group to wait, right? We're not letting them in yet, but we're just building momentum. 20 pending members, 50 pending members, 100 pending members, 200 pending members, 300 pending members. Why? Because all leading up to this Facebook group launch, we're doing all these interviews, talking about the messaging, talking about the offer, talking about what we're due, all the stuff. And so we're building up all this hype and all this momentum and letting everybody know who we are. Not only do we get free exposure and leads, we serve people, we build relationships with these influencers, and it's a win-win for everybody. The only time when this is not a win-win for everybody is if your messaging is bad. If your offer sucks, if it doesn't actually help people, then you're going to destroy your reputation. So literally, if you do a good job, everybody wins. If you do a bad job, everybody loses. So do a good job. Don't cut corners. Do the work, okay? Because you don't want to ruin reputation. You get as many shots at this as you want, but after, even if you fail and keep having bad messages, eventually people are just going to stop letting you come on their podcast or stop letting you come in their Facebook group. So make sure you do a good job, okay? So let's recap where we're at so far, and then we're going to get to the final step here, okay? First thing that I do in this process is I go and I say, I got to analyze my assets. What am I working with here, okay? What am I doing? Then I got to ask myself the question of what's my messaging? Where's my location of my ideal audience and where I want them to be? What offers am I going to use? Both my free offer and my paid offer. And number 4, content. What content am I going to use? Interviews is what we used for others. You could have used paid ads if you wanted to. We used interviews. And then what content am I going to use in my group once we launch it? For us, it was a 5-day challenge. That 5-day challenge went through and delivered their framework. Their framework had 5 steps into it. So we went in and delivered 1 per day. End of the 5-day challenge, we make the pitch and boom. Okay. So those are the first 4 of audience hacking: messaging, location, offer, content. Number 5 is we launch. Okay. We launch. Launching is the combination of all 4 of these things done correctly. We have our messaging delivered to our locations, talking about our offer via our content. Once people come into our world, once again, we're speaking our messaging to our location, our Facebook group, talking about our offer, our framework, right? Our solution to their problem in a way that they can understand via their content. That's the strategy, okay? And we do this in such a way that makes them interested in what we want to buy so that by the time they're done, we've handled all of their objections and they're ready to move forward and take a step forward, okay? So let me break down what we did here. I went to Brad. I said, Brad, we need some content. He's like, man, I'm not really good at Facebook Lives. I've never done them before. So I have him start practicing Facebook Lives as we're putting this all together. I start having him do interviews as we're putting this all together. Get it out there. Launch time comes. When we do launch week is the phase of launching is broken into 3 phases. We have hype week, launch week, and profit week. All right. So the week leading up to the Facebook group launch, what did we do? We did all dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of interviews and podcasts and Facebook groups and content. We're pushing it out to our audience. We're pushing it out to other people's audiences. We're getting on other people's podcasts. We're putting out lots and lots and lots of content, building up hype, saying, hey, this Facebook group is launching. Here's what it's about. Here's what it's about. Here's what it's about, right? Here's the pain you're in. Here's the problem we're providing. Here's why you need to be here. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be amazing. Hype, 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 hype. Then launch week comes. Launch week comes. Open the doors. Now this Facebook group is now live. But what? We need content in there because we put out content everywhere else. Now they're in our group. Now we need content. So the first week that we launch, we go through, we say, guys, next week, we're doing a 5-day challenge. And so every single day during that week, during the launch, during the 5-day challenge, every single day we're going to deliver a new video for this challenge. At the end of this challenge, you're going to have this result. All right. And on this end of the 5-day challenge, there's a very clear result. It's part of our messaging, how to achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less. You're going to have a game plan. If you take this 5-day challenge, at the end of it, you're going to have a game plan that's going to show you how you personally can go and achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less. We're going to walk you through our process. It's 100% for free. It's free content. Now, during launch week, all we have to do is get people super psyched about being in the group and point them to the 5-day challenge. All right. So what have we gone? Outside the Facebook group, we've taken our messaging, we've plastered it everywhere in all of the locations that we know our ideal audience is in, and we've given them our free offer for free, okay? So on the outside of a Facebook group, everything is free. Come into our Facebook group. It's free to join. When you join, you get a free lead magnet. Here's the messaging and the topics that we're going to cover in our Facebook group. We go to everybody else's audiences and bring our audiences to us. Then once they're to us inside of our Facebook group, what do? Now we say, let's get super psyched. We're going to teach you all about how to achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less. We've got this 5-day challenge coming up next week. Yeah, right? So 5-day challenge coming up next week. Push people to a landing page. Go register, go register, go register. We launched Brad's Facebook group, guys. This is a true story, okay? We launched Brad's Facebook group. Brad had like 200 people, maybe, in his little world, 200 or 300 people in his little world of people that we were promoting this to. Not very many people, okay? He got awesome results for his clients, but his clients were not social media influencers. Or if they were behind the scenes and weren't talking about it. Rachel Peterson and Steve Larsen and Russell Brunson are not promoting Brad Gibb all the time, right? More so now because he has a social media presence. But before this, nobody had heard of these guys, right? So we come in and I say, okay, go do this interview. Go do all these interviews. Go do this promotional tour. When we launched their Facebook group, In the first 7 days, we had almost 1,900 people join their group. Okay? 1,900, maybe it was the first 9 days. I think it was like 1,700 the first 7. So let's be conservative here. 1,700 people. They didn't have a massive list. They weren't famous. They didn't have a huge following on any platform. They had their messaging down super crystal clear, and that's what I worked with them on, okay? Super crystal clear on their messaging, super crystal clear on where their locations were of their dream audience, super crystal clear on their offers, and tons of content practice. I made them produce so much content on the back end, and they would go and they'd film a video, and I'd say, not good enough. Go do it again. They filmed their sales videos, their opt-in landing page videos like 25 times before they got it right. Over and over and over and over again. Why? Because I had to make sure the content was good enough. I had to make sure the offer was good enough. I had to make sure that they were communicating in the right way, okay? But when they launched, 1,700 people joined their group. You know how many people signed up for their 5-day challenge? Of those 1,700, 600 people. Okay? Huge numbers. I mean, this is huge. That's like 30% of the whole group signed up for this. Okay? Of people that actually went and completed the challenge, of those 600, like 250 people almost went and actually completed the challenge. 5 different days. Why? Because the messaging was awesome. The content was spot on. Now, I'm not going to dive into every little nook and detail cranny of how we went and did this. That's what the case study's for. That's what my paid programs are for. And that's what working with me is for, okay? Like, I have done this over and over and over and over again. Working with Steve Larsen, working with Brad Gibb, working with Damon, working with, you know what I mean? Like doing with these big names infos. We know what we're doing, okay? But we take this, you get it right, 250 people completed the challenge. Of those 250 people, guess how many booked paid calls? Now, we got from it. Now, before I tell you that number, I got to give you some context here, okay? At the end of our 5-day challenge, how we monetized was we offered them a $97 strategy session, okay? On that $97 strategy session, it was an hour-and-a-half long call, and we told them the first hour of that call is designed to help you get really clear on your game plan, to help you figure out how to take the next step towards achieving financial freedom in 10 years or less. And we're going to give you a really, really customized plan. And then the second, or the last third of the call, that last 30 minutes, if you're interested, we'll sit down and we'll show you our product line and we'll see if you're a good fit for any of our stuff, and we'll make you an offer if you're a good fit. You don't have to buy. We're not going to hard sell you, but we are going to show you if you want to take that next step, because we've been doing this for years and years and years and years, and we've helped hundreds of people go achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less. We have millions of dollars of property under management. We have all this stuff, right? So that was our pitch. You sign up for $100. If you get on that call, you're not happy with the call for any reason, we'll give you your $100 back, no risk whatsoever, okay? And then we'll upsell you if you're a good fit. Of the 250 people that actually went and booked their call, that actually went and completed the challenge, 121 people went and signed up for a $97 call. Do the math on that. That's about $12,000 in front-end sales only in 1 day. Well, actually, technically, it was a 3-day close cart sequence, okay? One launch, $12,000. And that was just for the initial call. Now they have 121 calls. In the first 7 days after that call, they closed over $100,000 in sales. And people loved it. People couldn't get enough of it. People were posting testimonial after testimonial. This game plan call was absolutely amazing. I'm so excited to get started. They had a $10,000 offer on the back end, and a $2,000 on the back end, and a $500 offer on the back end. They had 3 different suites of products that people could pick from. If they weren't fit for $10,000, they'd go $2,000. If they weren't fit for $2,000, they'd go $500. If they weren't fit for anyone, they didn't make them an offer. Okay? $152,000 in like 9 or 10 days. It's going to be closer to $400,000 they're predicting by the time it's all done in actual revenue to their bottom line. What did they do? They got clear on their message. They figured out their location. They knew their offer. They did the correct content to match all of those, and then they launched it tying all those things together in a way that their ideal audience could understand. And they took and went from almost a nobody on social media to now a raving Facebook group. You can go look at it. It's got like 2,500 members in it now. It's growing. It's rapidly engaged. They have a podcast now that they've launched. And in the first month, they did like 6,000 downloads to their podcast. I mean, they're crushing it. Okay. Why? because they followed the audience hacking framework, okay? Audience hacking is what I teach. Audience hacking builds you a loyal audience of raving fans that are ready to buy your product. Guys, audience hacking has nothing to do with the amount of views that you get, has nothing to do with your engagement on Instagram, right? Views don't make you money, okay? I know people that get 10, 20, 30,000 views a video on Instagram and make a couple $100 a month because that's all they know how to do, all right? We're building businesses here. We're building movements here. We're creating real impact, sustainable impact. If you want to create sustainable impact, if you want to make a real difference, if you want to be around for the next 3, 5, 10, 20 years, you've got to understand how to audience hack. You've got to understand how to go out there and leverage audiences, because all we're doing is leveraging other people's audiences, all right? When you know how to leverage other people's audiences, you never run out of customers. That's how Russell Brunson built ClickFunnels. It's how Steve Larsen has built his empire. It's how Brad Gibb is building their empire. It's how I'm building my empire. It's how virtually every massive person out there built their empire. Why? Because you're not going and creating customers. You're simply going and finding where they already exist, bringing them over into your world, educating them on the fact that you have a solution to their problem, showing them that to them through your messaging via your content, and then making them an offer that they cannot refuse and that they actually want to solve the problem that they're facing. It works for online businesses. It works for, offline businesses are basically coming online. It works for digital products. It works for physical products. It works for coaching. It works for consulting. It works for agency. It works for B2B. It works for B2C. It works for virtually anything that you do. You just got to understand this process because it's the strategy. Okay? We're doing this exact same thing for an SEO guy. We're doing this exact same thing for a yoga studio right now. Yoga. There's no money involved in yoga. We're not teaching people how to make money, and they're crushing it right now using this framework. Like in the first month, they have without my help, they bought my Done For You, and they got 1,000 members in the first 3 weeks. They were so blown away by the results. They came back and they're like, we just need to hire you because we don't even know what to do because we're getting so many good results. And so they came back and hired me. Okay. This works. Follow the audience hacking framework. Now, technically speaking, and I'm just going to throw this out there so that I can point back to this in the future. Technically speaking, there is a 6th step to audience hacking. That 6th step is systemizing. Okay. Because in order to make this sustainable, there's systemization. But I'm focusing on the core 5 right now because you don't even need to worry about systemizing until you get this launched. All right. So if you want to launch a Facebook group, you want to launch a podcast, you want to launch a YouTube channel, you want to launch whatever this is, you do this framework. Okay. In the very near future, I am going to be coming out with an offer. Hint, hint. Around this. And guess what I'm going to use? This framework, the audience hacking framework. Why? Because it works. Because it is proven to make money. Because I don't care if the economy is good or the economy is bad. I don't care if everybody is buying or nobody is buying. Okay? This is proven to work because it follows not only human psychology and buying patterns, it follows how business works, okay? It follows the educational process of educating your customers, and it cuts the curve down from, let me go back to the conversation I had with Brad Gibb all the way back in Boise, right? What did he say? Josh, the only way that I can go create a customer is by sitting down and have a 2 or 3 hour conversation with them. That's why I have to sell them $10,000 offers, because I don't have time to have a 2 hour conversation with someone and only sell something for $500. And I was like, that's just because your messaging is off, okay? Get your messaging right. If you get your messaging right, you get the location right, you get your offer right, you get your content right, and you launch correctly, you literally can sell anything to anyone and get a lot of new followers and members and new customers into your business. Keep in mind, we did this with 0 paid ads. We did not spend any money on paid advertising on this. The only money that went into this was we gave away some bonuses, I think on the 5-day challenge. Actually, that was for the podcast launch. I don't even think we spent any money on it. We paid for graphic design and stuff like that. But we didn't buy Facebook ads. We didn't buy Google ads. We didn't buy Instagram ads. We didn't buy any of that. All organically through this process. All right? So follow the audience hacking framework. If you guys want to get my free guide that's coming out on audience hacking, I'm in the process of writing it right now. To actually see this process in place, go to thinkdifferenttheory.com/audience hacking. thinkdifferenttheory.com/audience hacking. And it will take you to the wait list to get on the wait list to get my audience hacking playbook framework for free when it comes out. All right. thinkdifferenttheory.com/audience hacking. I'll link it down below in the description, and it will take you through this entire process when that book comes out. Guys, you can do this. Okay. This isn't some mystical thing. Brad and Ryan were, I feel like I need to tell you guys this story. All right. And then I'm going to wrap it up with this. Brad and Ryan were not good on camera. They were very awkward on camera. Okay. They were not good like if you were to go to their group now and see how they are on camera and like see how they write posts and do all that, that has literally all been learned in the past few months. It does not take that long when you're intentional about doing this. I had to work with them and be like, nope, that's not good enough. Nope, do it again. Nope, do it again. And Brad would literally pick up the phone. He would Vox me and be like, this sucks. Oh my gosh, I want to throw my head through a wall. And I'm like, yes, I know. But when you get it right, once you learn this, once it clicks, you're going to be like, lights out. It's going to be awesome. About 2 weeks ago, Brad Voxes me, and he goes, Josh, I finally get it. I understand what you're talking about now. I know how to create content. He's like, I'm not perfect at it, but I understand it enough. And they went and did their own launch without me, using the audience hacking framework that I had taught them how to do. And they ended up doing like $40,000 in sales, zero paid advertising from their Facebook group that they had launched without me, on top of all this, totally separate product and offer, like $40,000 in 1 week following this because they had learned the audience hacking framework. And now they're doing it without me. Now they're doing it on their own because they've learned the processes and the systems. You can do this as well. They were not good on camera. They were not good at writing. These are finance, analytics, data guys. They're not emotional, right? They don't know how to tell good stories. They don't know how to do all these stuff. They learned it. You can learn it as well. It is a learnable skill. All right. All right, guys, I hope this helped. I hope this was beneficial to you. That's all I've got for you here. Like I said, thinkdifferenttheory.com/audience hacking. Links down below. You can join the waitlist for when that comes out. We've got a launch coming up. I'm not exactly sure the dates yet, where we're going to be coming out with my program that will help you go through and do this. I'm very, very excited about it. We're still working out the details of the name and how we're going to roll it out because I want it to be different. I don't want it just to be like a standard, oh yeah, here's my $9.97 program course that's going to teach you audience hacking, whoop-de-doo. I mean, like, courses are good. Don't get me wrong. But I want to make this one truly unique. I want to make it truly special. I want to make sure that you guys are truly being served. And so I'm running these surveys, and you may have seen some surveys come through on ManyChat or through your emails asking for feedback. The reason I'm asking those questions on there, the reason they're kind of long is I want to know, okay, how do you learn? Where do you best consume content? Who are you following? Because if I can understand these things, then I can create a better product for you. I want you guys to succeed. And I want to be very clear on this, and I promise this is the last thing. I don't need to sell courses in order to make money. I make plenty of money going and doing these clients. I mean, Brad paid me a lot of money. Damon paid me a lot of money. The Axe Brothers paid me a lot of money. And Steve Larsen paid me a lot of, you know what I mean? Like, I can go and sell to those people. And I do, and I continue to do it. The reason I'm coming out with a program is because I know that there's a lot of you out there that want to do this, that want to go have a massive amount of impact, that want to go out there and really, truly go change the world, change your world, change the lives of the people. You're passionate about something, but you can't drop 25 grand right now. And so that's why we're coming out with this. And I want to come out with the best possible program to be able to serve you guys better. Not because I'm trying to, yes, I want to make money. Don't get me wrong. I have no shame in saying that I want to take money. But I'm not just creating this just to make money. I'm creating this to have a bigger impact, to help more amounts of people rather than just serving the people that are going to pay the big bucks. Because guess what? I could sell 20 courses, or I can go out and get one client, and I can make the exact same amount of money. Got it? I'm doing this to help as much as I can because I want you guys to be able to go out there and be successful, and you can go have success with this. Believe it, all right? And that's why we're spending so much time making this perfect, because when we do come out with this, I don't want this to be a halfway done product. I don't want this to be a product that only 1% of people get results with. I want it to be a product that 100% of people can get results with if they just put in the work. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you. Study audience hacking. I hope this was beneficial. If you liked this episode, please leave a comment down below. Hit the like button, hit the love button. The more likes, the more comments we get, the more people we can help. Say thank you. If you're listening on audio, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating, leave a review. Send me an Instagram DM if you have questions on this or you liked it. Shoot us feedback. I love hearing back from you guys. It just makes me so happy and makes me understand and know that I'm on the right path with everything here. As always, hustle, hustle. God bless. Do not be afraid to think different, because those of us that think different are going to be the ones that change the world. I love you all, and I will see you on the next episode. Take it easy, fam. Peace.